Cordelia was originally just a tavern dancer, but because she possessed the ancient Grey Wolf bloodline, she caught the attention of the war-crazed Marquis Blois. He forced Cordelia to bear him a child. To Blois, this was not a daughter of his own blood to cherish, but a tool for winning a world war. Afterward, Cordelia was locked away in a mental asylum. Fortunately, with Brian's help, she managed to escape. From then on, she hid inside a magician's box, traveling with Brian and performing magic shows. Meanwhile, her daughter Victorique was kept imprisoned by Blois in the top floor of the library. Victorique spent her days reading books. Gradually, she developed intelligence far beyond that of ordinary people. Later, Cordelia finally saw her daughter again. When she saw Victorique's lifeless, dull reaction, her heart filled with sorrow. She swore to herself that she would rescue her daughter no matter what. In 1873, a gold rush swept across Africa. The Kingdom of Sauville used its African colonies to transport massive amounts of gold back home. Afterward, all the workers involved were silenced by the royal family. Only Leviathan survived by sheer luck. But not long after, the king suddenly fell ill and died. The whereabouts of that gold became unknown. Leviathan became the only one who knew the truth. He found the gold and used it to disguise himself as an alchemist. Becoming a trusted figure by the new king and queen, Leviathan hoped to use this power to protect his homeland, but the peace didn't last long. Internal conflict arose within the Kingdom of Sauville. One faction was the Materialist Science Academy, the other was the Ministry of Supernatural, which believed in supernatural forces. The Science Academy claimed alchemy was a fraud, but the leader of the Ministry of Supernatural, Marquis Blois, firmly believed in it. As time passed, more and more people began to question Leviathan. Only a young noble named Ian continued to believe in him, but in order to prove that alchemy was real, Leviathan actually made Ian drink melted gold. Later, Leviathan was hunted down by the king's army. At that moment, Marquis Blois found him. He offered to spare Leviathan's life, on the condition that Leviathan would create artificial soldiers who feared no death to help him conquer the world. However, Blois never realized that Leviathan didn't know alchemy at all. Before dying, Leviathan told Blois that if he wanted the power to destroy the world, he should find a powerful woman and have her give birth to it. It was this very lie that Blois came to believe without question. Many years later, Victorique, who had been searching for her mother, followed the clues to a hidden chamber filled with gold. As the door to the chamber opened, Leviathan's corpse and piles of gold appeared before them. At last, the century-long deception was finally exposed, yet the lie Leviathan told before his death brought Victorique a lifetime of misfortune. As autumn arrived, Kazuya went to the library as usual, but Victorique was nowhere to be seen. Their teacher Cecile told him that the night before, Marquis Blois had sent people to transfer Victorique to a monastery. Since being separated from Kazuya, Victorique had refused to eat. Greville, worried about his sister, gave Kazuya an invitation. He told him that Victorique was being held in a monastery, where a magic show would soon take place. As long as he had the invitation, he could sneak in and rescue her. Kazuya immediately packed his things and headed for the monastery. As soon as he arrived, he spotted Victorique in the crowd. Kazuya chased after her, all the way to the top of the building. There, he finally found her, but what he didn't realize was that the person he had seen earlier was not Victorique, but her mother Cordelia, and the reason Blois brought Victorique here was to lure Cordelia out. Just as Kazuya was about to take Victorique away, he ran into a man named Hunter. He was someone Kazuya had met on the train before. On the surface, Hunter was a watchmaker, but in reality, he was a spy for the Science Academy. Hunter joined Kazuya and Victorique to watch the magic performance, but he looked down on the tricks with disdain. He decided to expose the illusion by stepping into the wardrobe used in the act. But when the cabinet door opened again, Hunter had been murdered. At that moment, a hallucinogenic smoke began to spread through the area. Kazuya suspected that the magician Brian was responsible, but when he chased after him, he instead encountered Cordelia. She handed Kazuya a ring and asked him to give it to Victorique. Just then, the bombs installed on the dam exploded. Seawater began to flood toward the monastery. People scrambled in panic toward the train. Kazuya picked up Victorique and ran forward with all his strength. At the very last moment, with the water closing in, they managed to board the returning train. Afterward, he gave Cordelia's ring to Victorique and told her that her mother had always been thinking of her. Only at that moment Did Victorique finally believe that her mother had always loved her deeply? It was Christmas once again. Marquis Blois planned to use this day to stage a play about Queen Corosse. When Cordelia heard the news, she immediately knew he had ulterior motives, so she decided to head to the capital with Brian. Meanwhile, Kazuya went out into the streets, planning to pick out a Christmas gift for Victorique. At that moment, a violent gust of wind swept through. Kazuya couldn't help but recall the village chief of Grey Wolf Village and his prophecy about the destruction of the world. At the same time, Victorique was taken away by Greville. She was ordered by Blois to solve an unsolved case involving Queen Corosse. Victorique was brought into a room, covered wall to wall with materials related to the case. Blois had long suspected that the killer was the king, but he lacked concrete evidence, so he needed Victorique's deduction to seize leverage against the king and elevate his own power even further. Queen Corosse, in the year 1887, had married into the kingdom from France, bringing her maid along with her. In 1900, after a difficult childbirth, she moved out of the palace and began living outside of it. Then in 1914, a French envoy came to visit, but what he saw was Corosse's headless corpse. During that period, only King Auguste had entered her room. At the same time, Corosse's head was discovered at a villa in the countryside. Because of this, Auguste was cleared of suspicion. Victorique tried to deduce Auguste's method, but the clues were incomplete, making it impossible to reconstruct the full sequence of events. Blois grew impatient. He decided to resort to extreme measures to force Victorique into making a deduction. Meanwhile, Kazuya learned from Greville that if Victorique failed to solve the case, Blois would never allow her to return to the academy, so Kazuya took it upon himself to search for clues. At the opera house, he saw a portrait of Queen Corosse on the wall, but the staff told him that it wasn't Corosse, but an actress named Nicolulu who looked very similar to her. However, as early as 1901, Nicolulu had already gone missing. Relying on his instincts, Kazuya felt that Nicolulu must be connected to this case. Later, he visited a bakery. The owner was a fan of Nicolulu. According to him, Nicolulu had been dead for many years. The date on her tombstone matched the very year Corosse left the palace. But strangely, after asking around, many people claimed they had seen Nicolulu alive even after 1900. Just as Kazuya was about to continue his investigation, he ran into Brian on the street. Brian brought him beneath the opera house and opened a door, telling him to go rescue Victorique. At the same time, another Brian inside the room rescued Victorique. Only after Kazuya appeared did he leave. After hearing the clues from Kazuya, Victorique decided to go to the cemetery and open Nicolulu's grave. Inside the grave was a corpse, but the body and the head were separated, and the head had long since decomposed. In addition, Victorique found Queen Corosse's suicide note on a brooch attached to the corpse. At this point, all the clues had been gathered. The group returned to the opera house to hear Victorique's deduction. In the version of the story known to the public, Corosse died in 1914, but in reality, her true time of death was 1900. To conceal this fact, the culprit found Nicolulu to act as Corosse's double, making everyone believe that Corosse was still alive. Until 1914, when the French envoy arrived, the culprit feared that the truth would be exposed, so Nicolulu was killed and her head was severed. As for the head found at the countryside villa, it was actually Corosse's head, preserved through special means. In the end, Nicolulu's head and Corosse's body were buried together in Nicolulu's grave. In the queen's grave lay Nicolulu's body and Corosse's head. At this point, the deduction was complete. Victorique stated that too much time had passed, and there was no direct evidence to identify the true culprit. But in truth, she already knew that the key to transporting Nicolulu's head was hidden inside King Auguste's massive crown. As for the reason Corosse was murdered, it was clearly written in the suicide note. Back then, Corosse and the alchemist Leviathan had fallen in love and engaged in an illicit relationship. After learning the truth, in a fit of rage, King Auguste killed Corosse. Afterward, Roger, the leader of the Science Academy, helped Auguste cover up the truth by orchestrating everything that followed. After everything came to an end, Kazuya and Victorique returned to the academy. Cordelia stood in the distance, watching them. Two Brians stood beside her. It turned out they were twins. After returning to campus, Victorique spent Christmas with Kazuya without incident. They exchanged gifts, but as the signs of war grew more obvious, the situation within the country became increasingly tense. The school suspended classes. All international students were to be sent back to their home countries. During the repatriation, Kazuya was rescued by Luigi. In order to see Victorique again, Kazuya decided to seek help from Greville, but to his surprise, Greville had already become an accomplice to his father Blois. Greville immediately had Kazuya arrested. Blois used Kazuya as leverage to force Victorique to make a choice. In order to protect Kazuya's life, Victorique had no choice but to obey her father and help him plan the next steps of the war. With the various strategies provided by Victorique, Blois' ambitions quickly became impossible to hide. He first gathered a group of radical warmongers and had them march in protest wearing rabbit masks, attempting to provoke war. In truth, after all these years, Blois had already realized that so-called supernatural phenomena did not exist, but he had also learned one thing from it: the supernatural could manipulate people's hearts. As long as it was used correctly, these false powers could blind the masses and become tools for launching war. Soon, the flames of war began spreading across European nations. At this moment, the king stepped forward, following Roger's advice. He wanted to protect the people and avoid war, but Blois would not accept such a weak national policy. He wanted to use war to build a stronger kingdom of Sauville. Then, he used the matter of Queen Carasse to threaten the king. If the truth were made public, the king's reputation would be ruined. As a result, the king was forced to appoint Blois as prime minister, granting him full control over the nation's future. At the inauguration ceremony, Blois passionately incited the radicals to start a war. He even declared that with Victorique's genius military strategies, they would achieve total victory. But at that moment, Victorique, dressed in black mourning attire, suddenly spoke. She declared that under Blois' lies, this country had no future. As she spoke, she removed her veil, revealing her true identity. This Victorique was actually Cordelia in disguise, with Brian by her side. She caused chaos at the ceremony. In the end, amid explosions and flashing blades, Cordelia successfully killed Blois, but she paid for it with her own life. Brian could not understand Cordelia's choice. He loved her deeply, yet she chose to sacrifice everything for her daughter. This decision filled Brian with hatred toward Victorique. He even wished to kill her on the spot. Victorique abandoned her pride and begged him for mercy. No matter what, she had to survive. This was her mother's final wish, and it was also because of her longing for Kazuya. After everything she had been through, she had already come to understand that some things were far more important than pride. As the two argued, Brian accidentally fell off a cliff. Fortunately, Victorique managed to save him in time. At the port as she prepared to leave Sauville, Victorique encountered Greville once again, but this time, he wasn't there to capture her. He had come to see her off. In the end, Brian's wounds worsened, and he died aboard the ship. Overnight, Victorique's hair turned silver. During a stop along the way, she encountered the missing Roger. He returned all the letters from Kazuya that had previously been confiscated. Only then did she learn that after their last separation, Kazuya had been sent back to his country to enlist in the army. He was now likely somewhere on the battlefield. Following the address in the letters, Victorique found Kazuya's hometown and waited there for his return. At last, spring of 1929 arrived, and she finally reunited with the one she had longed for day and night.